Right. Prime Minister, look, what we're talking about here now goes, I don't know, 70 or 80 stations across Australia. And there is white-hot anger out there. I wish you could see my mailbox, my emails. On February 23, your government announced the approval of Van Diemen's Land dairy farms, or at least Scott Morrison, the Treasurer, did to the Chinese. Now, forget for a moment we're talking about 19,000 hectares of the best dairy country, 29,000 dairy cattle, 100 million litres of milk a year. I would have called it a vital national strategic agricultural asset. But Scott Morrison said, and the Foreign Investment Review Board, the Chinese can have it. At some point in March, the Durack properties, famous, Carlton Hill and Ivanhoe, two jewels in our crown, 476,000 hectares in the Kimberleys, beneficiaries of the Ord irrigation scheme, which the people listening to you across Australia have funded.
No, I visited those properties, actually.
Right.
Visited Carlton Hill.
Absolutely. Righto. 13,000 hectares of freehold arable land, and this has been sold to Shanghai Zhongfu, trading in Australia as Kimberley Agricultural Investments. Now, they'll be able to do all sorts of things, they're telling us now. They'll grow sugar and cotton and sorghum and grain and so on an unprecedented scale, they say, for the Chinese people, the Durack family historic stuff. Now, there'd been a brouhaha over Van Diemen's Land, the brouhaha over the Port of Darwin, and yet Scott Morrison approves the sale of Carlton Hill and Ivanhoe on the eve of an election and does not tell the electorate. Is that duplicitous behaviour to ask people to go to the election, denying them information on which they may actually make a different decision about how they'll vote? Because suddenly at the end of March 29, an announcement is made by the government that a foreign ownership register will not be made public. So if you don't have the foreign ownership register made public, the electorate will have no idea that the Durack properties have been sold. People who are listening to this program are absolutely outraged by this, Prime Minister. They're seeing this in a behavioural sense as corrupt behaviour. What's your response to that?
Well, Alan, I want to resist that innuendo or allegation. And as far as the Durack properties are concerned, I don't have the facts in front of me on that. Scott Morrison, I'll speak to him as soon as we're off the air. But I think he'd be in a position to answer that. But I can't. I can't comment.
There is a reason I'm asking you this. Okay, there is a reason I'm asking you this, and I'll just very quickly say that Covey Station was sold to the Chinese under Swan and Co. when there was an Australian consortium on my program who told me that they had made a higher bid. They were ignored. Van Diemen's Land dairies were sold to the Chinese. Morrison approved it, but Jan Cameron on my program told me she'd made an equivalent bid. Morrison refused to see her and indeed ridiculed her offer. Now Carlton Hill and Ivanhoe have been secretly approved, the Chinese purchase, when a major property owner at Rio here has asked to see me, a major corporate identity known to you, who told me that he would have wanted to bid for these properties had he known they were for sale. Do you understand this leads to the conclusion that someone has a ready access to decision-making that is not available to others?
Well, can I just say generally, I don't know the facts about Carlton Hill, that the station that you talked about earlier, but about that particular transaction. I'd make this observation: the processes that the Treasurer goes through the Foreign Investment Review Board are absolutely rigorous. They are objective. The decisions are taken.
Well, why weren't we told prior to the election? Why didn't he tell us?
Well, Alan, I don't know whether those. With great respect,
what, the people listening to you are furious.
I'm not familiar with. But
all right, because I'm coming to a point.
The Treasurer is the person to answer that, because I just don't have. I don't want to comment on assertions I don't know.
But you'd think he'd take this to the Cabinet. You'd think it'd be discussed by the government. This is the point. Now, this week we learn that South Mole Island on the Whitsundays, the jewel of the Whitsundays, gone to the Chinese. Daydream Island gone to the Chinese. Lindemann Island gone to the Chinese. Port of Darwin gone to the Chinese. They reckon Renmark Airport's going to go to the Chinese. Now, Paul Dibb, the Emeritus Professor of Strategic Studies at the Australian National University, has written this week, quote, "We're living in an exceedingly dangerous world that is challenging the core values of our Western civilization. The fact is, Russia and China, both authoritarian powers, are challenging the Western liberal order through the use of military force and coercion. They are aligned in their hostility towards the United States and its democratic allies. They are seeking to alter international borders and extend their territories. And this is occurring just as Western electorates are experiencing, and here's the point, a yawning gap between the governed and their governments. Do you understand that that yawning gap has a whole heap of people out there who vote very, very angry?
Well, Alan, I've just been through an election. I'm very keenly aware of the concerns of the Australian electorate and the perhaps we could describe it as the disappointment that many Australians have with governments and governments of both persuasions, the concerns they have about economic change, the concerns they have. This is
an economic invasion, Prime Minister. This is an economic invasion. China are getting everything. And then you've got the Global Times newspaper, an editorial headed a couple of weeks ago, Paper Cat, quote, Australia will learn its lesson. 2 million readers. And what they've said, because they're upset with us because we supported the decision in The Hague, the Global Times talked about Australia's uncivilised origins, described us as an offshore prison of the UK, that we were colonised in a process filled with the tears of the Aborigines, and, quote, if Australia steps into South China Sea waters, it'll be an ideal target for China to warn and strike. A door, selling them everything they want, dairy farms, beef farms, South Mole Island, tourism, now perhaps electricity. You're the Prime Minister. Can you put a stop to this nonsense?
Well, Alan, what we do is rigorously apply the litmus test of the national interest to these.
What is the national interest when we're selling off all this infrastructure, these infrastructure assets and agricultural assets? Where does the national interest lie? Our interest?
Well, Alan, Australia has always been an importer of capital,
that's right. Investment, I agree. Investment,
there are. You talk about the Chinese investment in. Again, I'm not familiar with the Carlton Hill transaction, but I read
This is ownership, PM. This is ownership, not investment.
No, and it is.
It's ownership.
Investment and ownership. You can invest without owning something, but you can. Most people, when they invest,
you want control. You know this. You're a businessman. You want control. You want control. They've got control. PM, the Port of Darwin, the Port of Melbourne, the Kimberleys, Van Diemen's Dairy, Northwest Victoria, South Mole Island, Daydream Island. My God. And now, here we are up in the Kimberleys, 476,000 hectares. The people listening to me, PM, across Australia are saying, will Malcolm Turnbull stop this Chinese economic invasion? You've got Paul Dibb saying they are in a predatory mood, they're insulting us in the Global Times, and we're giving them everything they want.
Well, I wouldn't place too much store on the Global Times. It is a particularly, jingoistic, nationalistic newspaper. It doesn't represent that's not the President of China speaking.
No, I know that.
There's plenty of stuff in the media in Australia that other countries might find annoying or insulting, but it doesn't represent the official voice of the Australian
This is not a boxing tournament, so we're beaten by the bell. We've got to talk again, okay?
Okay, thank you very much.
Good to talk to you. Thank you for your time.